Clara Bow, aka the It Girl, was the #1 movie star in America at the end of the silent era. Although she made quite a successful transition to the talkies, legend has often held that she failed due to her voice. This legend has been disproven by film historians, including her biographer David Stenn. And while I don't have any new information to add about her retirement from the screen in 1933, it is my hope that this video will serve more as a tribute to one of the greatest and most talented movie stars in history. Before I begin, I must credit David Stenn for the incredible research that he put into writing the amazing biography, Clara Bow, Runnin Wild, which I highly recommend that you read to learn Clara's entire story. Now, join with me as I briefly cover the career of the brilliant Clara Bow. She was born in Brooklyn in 1905 to Sarah and Robert Bow. Sadly, to say that her childhood was awful is an understatement. According to Stenn, her mother never wanted children. Sarah was also the daughter of a mentally ill mother and was mentally ill herself and abusive towards Clara, even trying to kill her on occasion. Robert was most often absent and also was abusive when he was around. Clara's biggest solace was escaping to the movies, and she decided at a young age that she would be a movie star. In 1921, 16-year-old Clara entered Brewster Publications' Fame and Fortune contest and won by completing a screen test demonstrating her raw natural acting talent. She won a feature in Motion Picture Classic magazine, and through her persistence was given a role in the 1921 Beyond the Rainbow film starring Billy Dove. Clara's role was cut from the final print, but later re-added after she achieved success. She was devastated by this cut, but fortunately a director saw her photo in Motion Picture Classic and brought her in to play a tomboy character in Down to the Sea in Ships, which was released in 1922, and somewhat put Clara on the map, as she was able to get cast in smaller roles for films at other East Coast studios, including the short The Pill Pounder, which was thought to be lost until it was discovered recently in Omaha. Clara also auditioned for and was cast in F. Scott Fitzgerald's written Grit, which got her good reviews. Down to the Sea in Ships also got Clara noticed by B.P. Schulberg, the president of the small studio Preferred Pictures, who sent a scout and agent to summon her from Brooklyn to Hollywood in 1923. Clara first appeared in a supporting role in Maytime at Preferred in 1923, before being loaned out to First National to appear in the Corinne Griffith vehicle Black Oxen, which she essentially stole from Corinne. Black Oxen became one of Clara's breakthrough films, as her portrayal of Flapper Janet got her great reviews and a Photoplay Acting Award in 1923, and foreshadowed the type of roles that would define her in just a few years. It also led to her being named a Wampus Baby Star of 1924 and thrust her further into the limelight. According to Stenn, Clara became somewhat of a commodity, and Schulberg couldn't wait to lend her out to other studios to make multiple motion pictures at once. In addition to severely overworking her, Schulberg also treated her terribly and underpaid her. Clara's films between 1924 and 1925 at Preferred and at other loan-out studios may not have been the best ones of her career, but in all of them it is apparent that Clara's talent was immense and, in my opinion, her raw emotional ability was often unmatched. It was clear she was on the road to major stardom. I still enjoyed watching many of these films during this time. I think some highlights include Empty Hearts, which gave Clara a brief opportunity to demonstrate some of that emotional ability opposite John Bowers; Helen's Babies, which saw her as a motherly type figure to the star Baby Peggy; Parisian Love, which saw her in a more serious drama; and My Lady of Whims, which demonstrated her gift for comedy and showcased her powerful, expressive eyes in her close-ups. Later in 1925, Schulberg found the perfect vehicle for Clara to launch her into superstardom, The Plastic Age, which starred Clara as Flapper Cynthia and teamed her with Donald Keith, who she would co-star with often, and her future boyfriend and lifelong friend Gilbert Roland. The film was a huge hit, and according to Stenn, Clara was coined the hottest jazz baby in the press, a distinction that friend Louise Brooks would say years later defined Clara as being the personification of the 1920s. The Plastic Age also attracted Paramount, who contacted Schulberg and offered to buy his company, bring him on as a producer, and bring his star roster with him, including Clara Bow. Schulberg accepted, and Clara moved to Paramount, where she would stay for the next several years. Clara almost immediately had a huge hit at Paramount as Flapper Kittens and Dancing Mothers in 1926, which saw her steal the movie from its leading lady, Alice Joyce. The film got her more rave reviews and won her another Photoplay Acting Award. Paramount realized what a hot commodity they had and put Clara to work in her next big hit almost immediately, Man Trap, which was another smash and was followed by yet another smash, Kid Boots, which co-starred Eddie Cantor. Clara was not only winning over her audiences, but was still winning over most of the critics. Clara then starred in two of her most famous roles, if not her most famous, both of which won her acclaim, and both of which were smash hits in 1927. The first released was It, which was a loose adaptation of Eleanor Glynn's novel of the same name, but was really an excuse for Schulberg and Paramount to capitalize on Clara's popularity by coining her the It Girl, a phrase that stuck. It was also the second silent film that I ever saw close to 20 years ago. The first was Sunrise, and made me fall in love with Clara, but I digress. The other film that year was Wings, which was a massive hit and won the first Academy Award for Best Picture. In my opinion, Clara gave one of her strongest performances in 1927's Children of Divorce, which saw her as the multifaceted Kitty who tricks her friend's man, played by Gary Cooper, into marriage. On the surface, it sounds like a fun slapper, but Clara gave Kitty multiple layers of depth and emotion that make the entire film a real treat to watch. I suggest checking it out on YouTube. In 1928, Clara filmed her first and only color film sequence for another Eleanor Glynn adaptation, Red Hair, which was another hit. While the entire film is unfortunately lost, Clara's color sequence has survived and showed the audience the powerful bright red color of her hair. It should be noted now that part of Clara's appeal was her personification of jazz, her personification of the free and fun lifestyle of the 1920s slapper. Part of the way that she was able to achieve this personification on the screen was the free and unrestrained way that she was able to film all of her scenes and act in them. Clara was hardly a static actress, and her dynamic abilities depended on her ability to physically move freely while she was filming. It's as if her entire body is giving the performance, and that, to me, is what launched her into stardom. The emotion wasn't just in her eyes, but was everywhere. She was truly a rarity among actors at that time, and frankly, at any time. I mention this because as the talkies were developing in the late 1920s, restraint in filming was developing with them. Actors were forced to memorize lines, were unable to improvise anymore, and had to, most importantly, freeze themselves on various marks to ensure their voices were picked up by the microphone. To a natural free mover like Clara, this constraint was understandably horrible. She was also very anxious and unsure about how her voice would record. Nevertheless, she rose to the occasion and filmed her first talkie, The Wild Party, in 1929, which was a hit and got her good reviews. Audiences heard no issue with her voice, and one critic mentioned that it suited her. I also must mention that in 1928 and 1929, Clara was the #1 box office star in America, including her work in her talkies. Also in 1929, Clara released the talkies The Saturday Night Kid and Dangerous Curves, which were successful enough to keep her #1 and saw her enter 1930 at #2, second only to Joan Crawford at the box office. According to Stenn, one reviewer of Dangerous Curves predicted Clara would have a bright future in the talkies. Clara's first film of the 30s was Paramount on Parade, a variety show film, kind of like MGM's Hollywood Review, that saw Clara singing on film for the first time in the True to the Navy number, which was also immensely popular with audiences and led to her filming an inspired sequel, True to the Navy, later that year. She had another hit in the 1930 film, Her Wedding Night. Unfortunately, at this time, Clara was suffering many personal problems and was caught up in a few scandals. She also was beginning to get burnt out with making movies, and her anxiety over the sound of her voice recording in the talkie microphones intensified. Stenn labeled this in his biography as her having, quote-unquote, mic fright. Her burnout and scandals worsened her relationship with Paramount, who wanted this star to keep making them money, but to follow the morals clause in her contract. Since Clara was no longer, quote-unquote, playing the game, Schulberg and Paramount began to offer her lesser material, and films like No Limit and Kickin' were both released in 1931 and were not commercially successful. Unfortunately, Clara's personal scandals also cost her her adoring audiences. After trying to break her contract with Paramount, Clara finished it out on a break, finally leaving the studio for good at the end of 1931. But Clara was a still bona fide star, and according to Stenn, multiple studios tried to offer her contracts. She eventually signed a 2-movie deal with Fox and had a massive comeback with 1932's Call Her Savage, which was a commercial smash and got her best reviews in over 2 years. I highly recommend checking it out on YouTube. But she was still burnt out. She was just plain tired of making movies. She had also fallen in love with and married Western star Rex Bell and longed to live a simple family life with him. To fulfill her deal with Fox, Clara filmed Hoopla, which was released in 1933. Although it was not a hit like Call Her Savage, Clara got great reviews from critics, singling out her for delivering a good, mature performance. I agree. The emotional speech that Clara delivers at the end of the film is incredible. Please check it out on my page. In 1933, following Hoopla, Clara retired for good from the movies at the age of 28. Clara and Rex had their first son, Rex Jr., in 1934, and then opened The It Cafe in Hollywood in 1937, which saw Clara get favorable press coverage. However, due to another pregnancy, Clara quickly retired from the restaurant business and closed the restaurant to give birth to her second son, George, in 1938. But, unfortunately, Clara's perfect family life was short-lived. The rest of Clara's life saw her wrought with many personal issues, chief among them her growing, crippling anxiety, which caused her to become reclusive, often terrified to leave the house. This anxiety did not pair well with Rex Bell's political ambitions in Nevada. After Clara was briefly institutionalized in the late 1940s, the couple separated but did not divorce. Clara moved into an apartment in Los Angeles and was in the constant company of a caregiver and became even more of a recluse. Sadly, she spent most of her final years battling insomnia and her ever-worsening mental health issues and was often quite lonely, only seeing her sons on special occasions. She briefly appeared in public on occasion, including to see movies at the drive-in. Her favorite actress at the time was Marilyn Monroe, who she called the new It Girl. Sadly, Clara passed away in 1965 at the age of 60 from a heart attack. Unlike other stars that I discussed, Clara's stardom didn't really falter in the talkies. She made a successful transition to the new film medium, and although her scandals hurt her public reputation slightly, she was able to bounce back from them with Call Her Savage. Stenn argues, and I agree, that she could have gone on making movies after Hoopla, but she just didn't want to. She had had enough. Her exploitation and overworking from studio bosses had sent her into mental and physical exhaustion, worsening her genetic predisposition to mental illness. She needed a break. It was her choice not to go on, no one else's. Clara told a reporter in 1930, quote, "I'm a curiosity in Hollywood. I'm a big freak because I'm myself," end quote. I want to end on that quote. Clara was always herself. She was not afraid to be candid with reporters about her anxiety and not afraid of personal scandal. Her candor with reporters about her mental health made her, in my opinion, a real trailblazer. Other stars would never have been so frank at that time and would have been afraid to be so, but not Clara. She was always herself. That truth, along with her incredible natural talent, in my opinion, make her possibly the greatest movie star of all time. Again, I have to thank David Stenn for his brilliant book, Clara Bow, Runnin Wild, and encourage you all to order a copy today. It will make you fall in love with and respect Clara even more. Please like this video and subscribe or follow this account if you want to learn more about the history of silent film stars whose stardom lasted only briefly in the talkies. Up next, join me as I cover the silent to talkie career of Francis X. Bushman, Jr. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you so much for appreciating Clara as much as I do. I hope you have a great week.